Here's Africa in View as we give you some depth around the latest developments in Namibia, where protesters stormed Parliament demanding Germany increase genocide reparations. The protesters, led by the opposition and traditional leaders, say they were not consulted on the $1 billion compensation offer from Germany. So to give us a little bit more insight, we're joined by Henny Seibeb, who is a Namibian Member of Parliament and also a deputy leader of the Landless People's Movement Party, which consists of some descendants of the victims of the genocide. Henny, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Newzroom Afrika. This is a really concerning matter. Around 300 protesters stormed Parliament on Tuesday, really demanding some answers and some accountability. What exactly happened on Tuesday?
Yeah, on Tuesday, what happened is that as you correctly said, the genocide issue was supposed to be debated by the parliament. But now we know that what the Namibian government and the German government did was that they deliberately excluded the key negotiators or the key communities from the negotiations, which are the Overhero and the Nama traditional leaders authorities. The key ones that are not necessarily in tandem with the ruling party politics were left out, and also key civil society movements or groups were also left out. So what we did was we organized a march, and then we marched to the Parliament of the Republic of Namibia. But now what normally happened is that the Speaker of the Parliament locked us out. They erected a fence, I think in the last 2 months, that effectively blocked us out from entering the gates of Parliament and to hand over our petition. So as you saw, we jumped in, and then we were met then by the Deputy Speaker towards a lengthy negotiations. But what has happened is that we managed to submit a petition. We went into Parliament 2:30 and we took up the matter aggressively in Parliament. But the issue is the exclusion and the quantum, the amount that the German government is offering to the Namibian government as part of reparations deal, which is now 18 billion rands over a 30-year period, is actually the thorn in the flesh. We are saying that amount of 18 billion rands is small compared to what the Imperial Germans have committed in the borders of Namibia during the 1904-1908 war, the war that they term as the war for the national resistance of Namibia, but actually it is a genocide. And also in the joint declaration that the Namibian government and the Germans have initialed, the Germans effectively doesn't want to use the word genocide. They don't want to use it. They are also unclear about the precise number of people, the Overhero community and the Namas, that were annihilated through the Vernichtungsbevel, the extermination order that was given by General von Trotter, who came from East Africa and China at the time. So the wording is problematic. Germans don't want to use the word genocide, because if you recall, this one is the first genocide in the modern era, because it was committed between 1904 and 1908. And thereafter, 1914, the Armenian genocide came, and later on, as we know, the Jewish genocide came. So what we are saying is that the von Trotter, what was happening in Namibia at the time, was used for the Third Reich. It was used by the Nazi regime of Hitler to mete out the same Holocaust against the Jews in the Nazi Germany of the time by Hitler.
Mm-hmm. Let's now talk more about the emotional impact as you stormed Parliament, handed in this petition, and some of the concerns that are contained within that the petition, what it falls short on, this agreement, especially considering the whether or not a meaningful apology was used or brought through, and perhaps what it means for the descendants of the victims of this genocide that you describe, the emotional impact, even as this happened more than a century ago, surely the emotions are still something that is of significance.
Exactly, you are quite right, and I think it's a good question. You know, one of the scars that the legacies of the Imperial Germans have left is the land dispossession. You will remember that after 908, the Germans established themselves, and thereafter the South African mandate came, the mandated territory came, where the League of Nations was supposed to prepare Namibia for independence, but South Africans stayed put. So first, the land dispossession, which started already way back in 1884 with the scramble of Africa, was now cemented. And then the apartheid South Africa came, and then they also dispossessed our people of land. So today we are faced with the issue of the land question. Today, if you can look at the Hainkom indigenous community, have been dispossessed of their ancestral land completely. The same goes for the Nama people in the southern part of our country, the Damaras also. The same speakers like the Kwekwekwababa of the Namas, they were all dispossessed of land. These people are completely, as we talk now, facing an era where even in modern day Namibia, the ruling party continues to dispossess them of their land. I mean, I raised an issue of dispossession of land by the Prime Minister of the Hainkom indigenous people. It continues until today. So it's psychological. The impact is there. Today you find most of the communities, the descendants of the Overhero and the Nama, Damara and Hainkom, they are living in urban peripheries, in Windhoek and so on. White commercial farms are flourishing. They are employed, the descendants, most of the time as farm tenants, the laborers. But once they reach the age of 80, they are being cast, removed from farms, they are left or dropped in corridors and so on. So the cycle of poverty has increased, rural poverty has increased as a result of that. Inequality has increased, unemployment is vast amongst the reserve because the land that they dispossess from the local indigenous communities also are the lands where we find basically Namibia's mainstay today, the diamonds, the gold, and so on. So all this has been lost. The commodification of the commons in the transition to neoliberalism has taken place when SWAPO came into power. So these people today, that's why you find unending questions about land in Namibia. The same also in South Africa and Zimbabwe. The willing seller, the willing seller, willing buyer concept is outdated, it's not working anymore. So now the country is actually moving towards whether we should do, like the South Africans are doing, the expropriation of land without compensation, or should we go for expropriation of land with just compensation, looking at the agricultural value, the productivity of the land, as opposed to the market value. And then we have a question of the absentee landlords, the descendants of Germans that own vast hectares of land here, but they chose to reside in Germany and so on. So it's a whole question of land, it's a whole question of economy, it's the whole question of psychology and so on. So we hope by this reparations money that at least some of them could be pulled back into building schools, universities, memorial sites, improving on culture, having some of the victims to be treated, because the scars are still there. You will find our communities, the Overherero speaking communities, for example, but when you engage them, you will think you are speaking to a white person, but it's a result of the legacies of apartheid by German discrimination. Germany was using rape, torture as a means to force locals to succumb to their demands.
Henny, if you'll allow me, let's talk a little bit about government's response to some of these really serious matters that you're putting on the table here, the ripple effect of the genocide and the impact it's having on people even today, and also just really taking into account a resolution that you would like to see being put forward. You also speak about how the money can be spent, and you're also saying that the money is not merely enough. So let's just round it up quickly as we try and get some sense of what your thoughts are around this.
Look, government is caught into two folds. Government is caught one thing, because at the one hand, I realize, because since engaging SWAPO later, some of the ministers and so on, I realize that actually we agree on the history. The history is quite clear, but the real problem now is the quantum. Now, some in government are saying, let's accept the 18 billion rands as it is proposed. And some are saying no. So the real catch here now is that Tuesday and Wednesday, the debate will still continue. And thereafter, the parliament has to vote. Whether they are voting to say we are going to accept the joint declaration between the two countries, or whether they are going to reject it with some conditionalities. For example, to say, let's increase the quantum from 18 billion rands maybe to 40 or to 50 billion. Some communities of IRO communities are calling even as far as 1 trillion 1 trillion rands. So these are the nitty-gritties that must be looked at, so that a document must be brought back that is acceptable to all. But if the amount remains 18 billion rands, I can guarantee you that the communities will continue with the protests, the marches, and some are even threatening farm invasions of the German descendants. So I think the struggle will continue, but there is a doubt in the cabinet members also.
Mm-hmm. Very well, thank you so much. Rounding it off quite nicely there, Henny Seibeb there, speaking as the Namibian Member of Parliament and Deputy Leader of the Landless People's Movement Party, which consists of descendants of the victims of the genocide, giving us an overall picture of where they're standing. They're not budging. 18 million rand is not merely enough to compensate for the horrors of the genocide of 1904 to 1908 within Namibia.